Anesthetics as well with children. Hey, you know what complements great conversations is fine wine, and there is nothing finer than a bottle of Plantagenet wine. Whether you're relaxing after a long shift, at a gathering with friends, or lounging by the fire, Plantagenet wine provides the perfect complement to any occasion. Plantagenet wine is meticulously crafted in one of the most remote locations in the world, using finest ingredients available to create elegant and sophisticated wines that you deserve. Head to plantagenetwines.com for your online order and enter the code NURSES at the checkout to receive 10% off your order with free shipping Australia-wide on any order over $180. So stock up for winter or plan the perfect gift with the most enchanting collection of wines you'll ever try. Head to plantagenetwines.com and enter the code NURSES to start your Plantagenet experience. Conversations with Nurses is proudly sponsored by Fat Burners Only, Australia's #1 online supplement store. Nursing is a demanding job and requires your body to be in tip-top condition. So why not head to Fat Burners Only, Australia's go-to store for supplements online. FBO provides you with a full range of supplements to support your hectic lifestyles and, of course, the energy and focus you need for those long shifts. FBO has Australia-wide free express shipping so your products arrive at your door faster. And as a special treat for our listeners, enter the code NURSES at the checkout to receive 10% off every order, with proceeds going towards supporting this very podcast. Look good, feel great, and operate at peak performance with Fat Burners Only. Proudly supporting nurses in association with your #1 nursing podcast, Conversations with Nurses. We are trying to use humour to cheer people up, aren't we?
Humour, distraction, just help them feel, because obviously the healthcare environment is so foreign to people and the emergency department is foreign again.
Yeah.
Before I started properly working in the emergency department, I had no real concept of it. And now that I've kind of been there for a little while and I understand the workflows, I understand the environment, it's a lot less terrifying than it used to be.
Can you share with us some lingo that you use in ED? Because everywhere nursing is full of lingo and full of acronyms, a language that the non-nursing people wouldn't understand.
I feel a lot of the lingo is more shorthand. So ED, we've gotten very good at basically breaking down a lot of those very complex terms and just having them in a really quick digestible thing that kind of comes out of a lot of our priority 1 nursing. So I said to our doctors who are coming in doing their first priority 1, it's like, okay, what I need you to do, you need to get me an IV line, then I want a VBG, and then I want an FBC, UEC, coags, which is a very shorthand version to say, okay, what I want you to do for me is get a IV cannula into the patient, and you're going to start drawing me off a series of blood tests. So we want to know our full blood count, which will look at like our red blood cells, white blood cells, and some basic electrolytes. We then want to start looking at our coags, so our coagulation profiles, and a VBG or a venous blood gas, where we're looking at the patient's, overall pH of their blood. We're looking at, their potassium, their sodium, their blood count, because we can get a VBG very quickly. And we're getting a really quick snapshot of that patient's health profile that'll then guide our next steps for that emergency management.
And the funny ones?
Yeah, I've got the funny ones. We can talk about, I had a patient who got a stroke call, and they came in because they were feeling very weak on one side, and we forgot to ask them, have you had anything to drink today? We then found out later that they had a BAL of 0.3. So they were quite drunk and scored themselves a stroke. So he was 6 times the legal driving limit.
Oh, my God. And did he drive himself in?
No, he got ambulance in because his family was worried.
Okay.
Because if he'd driven in, there would have been a whole other set of questions about how did you get there? How did you actually drive?
Where's the key in the ignition?
Yeah, where's the keys? We're taking them off you and we're going to refer this to police.
Yeah. You mentioned other languages, though. When you talk to your fellow doctors or your fellow nurses, there's some funny ones you were mentioning before.
So I have a very, very close colleague in some of the medical staff, but there's a bit of a accepted thing that's passed around that it said, keep an eye on what I'm doing, because there's been more than a few times where I've walked in to just check a patient. They're not necessarily my allocated load, but I'll have a look at them and be like, oh dear, something has gone terribly wrong and we need to fix this now. The last patient I did this for walked into the bay and their ECG rhythm had changed astronomically and they were basically having an evolving heart attack. And I was like, I think I need some friends. Let's get a party started. And
hit the emergency bell.
We actually, funnily enough, don't hit the emergency bell in the department as much as we should, because I thought it'd be much quicker to just yell, "Oi, Code Stammy, get your asses in here!"
And people hear that.
Oh yeah, I'm very loud and it's very distinctive. So
and what about the other patients that are there? They can hear you saying, "Get your asses in here." Yeah,
pretty much. So it's kind of you win some, you lose some. But either way, especially our ED curtains are not as soundproof as we would like to think.
You think that? That's right.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks, shut the curtains. Nobody knows what's happening behind that curtain.
No, correct. Everybody knows what's
Everybody
happening.
hears what's happening. They've probably heard those vibrations going down the corridor to thinking, what's the hell?
I am sure they have.
So do you think when you said you had a doctor that keeps an eye on you because you can walk in and then you find the patient deteriorating. Correct. That could either be two ways. They see you and then they deteriorate, or you're like a guardian angel and your instinct is to go into somebody's room because you've got this fine-tuned instinct that goes, something's going on in here, but you're not even aware that that's happening.
Or the third option, I have just the worst either the worst or the best sense of timing.
Yeah.
Like how you met my sister. I walk into someone having a heart attack. All serendipity.
Serendipity. Well, I think it's actually somebody's guardian angel looking after them because you're being sent in, you know what you're looking at, and you can call it, even if you call them, get your asses in here.
Yeah. And like I say to my new nurses, you will never be in trouble for hitting that MET bell. It is a way to get you help. You're going to get your senior staff to come and support you. Mm-hmm. I say to nursing students or med students, whatever students, all the time, open an airway, whether it's the patient's or your own. I don't care which is first.
That's right. Get the patient breathing or you scream for help.
Correct. It works.
It does. Don't be ashamed and don't be afraid of making a mistake.
No. Like I say to all of my new staff when I'm an area lead, I would rather you tell me stuff that you feel is a nuisance 100 times and you get me to review that patient 100 times than you don't tell me and we as a team miss something.
Yeah. I have that in my training groups where I ask people questions, like if I'm teaching basic life support and I ask them questions. And nobody wants to speak up, or they speak so softly, or they all speak together and you can't hear anybody in particular.
Yeah.
And I always say to them, no answer's the wrong answer. Think.
No. Share
this information and we can explain one way or the other whether it's right or wrong.
But being wrong is okay. I think that's what nursing has really forgotten in its education, that we're so focused on we're passing the exam, we're passing this, we're passing that. We want to get through our exams. But as I teach students, I don't care about your exam results. All your degree is the license to drive in a profession that you have chosen. When you hit the floor, that's where your true learning starts and we grow together.
Exactly.
Because as I say to students, I will learn as much off you as you hopefully will learn off me.
Yep, and that's where hospital training was great because we were learning on the floor with the real patients and making mistakes. Whereas the university, you read everything in a book, but then you have to come back onto the floor and start to try and apply all of that science to a patient.
Exactly. You can only learn so much from a textbook. Like even in some of my reading currently, I'm going back over all of my basic heart pathophysiology. I'm relearning how the heart functions as an organ, the electrical impulses, the discharges, how that generates the wave that I look at and interpret. But you can only really start to truly put it together when you're seeing it in practice day in, day out, going to the docs with the ECGs and saying, hey, I think that this is a problem. What do you like? Do you agree with me? And then sometimes they'll turn around and say, nah, you're full of it. And sometimes they'll say, okay, let's keep an eye on it. We'll repeat it in 15 minutes.
What books are on your bedside table?
Essentials of Critical Care Nursing, CROSID, like Fundamentals of Pharmacology, Pathophys. I've gone back to my study now because I've gone back to just the humble joys of Terry Pratchett and other nonsense.
Yeah.
Or bed.
Good. I was going to say, with you doing all that extra study, I thought your bedside table must be full of clinical books.
No, I've been told by my partner that they must migrate back to the study because they're not letting me get to sleep properly because there's only so many times you can read an arterial line, how to interpret zero before you just start to dream about them and think about them. That's not productive, not healthy.
I used to have dreams. Catch that drip quick before it runs through.
Yeah.
I used to be shaking my husband, quick, 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 that needle, it's going to inject. You have to roll that patient so they don't lie on the needle.
No, mine's more just hearing the pumps alarm or beep. You can't get away from it. You can't get away from the beeping or the call bells.
We take this work with us home. It's not a job where you can just pack it up and leave it at the front door and you go home and do something else, is it? It's with you. It's in your heart. It's in your passion. You're thinking about it all the time. You want to make improvements. You want to be the best person possible. And we're human.
Exactly.
We do make mistakes.
We do. We absolutely do.
And sometimes we see things we just can't get out of our brain. Is there something that you've found you can tell at a party all the time, a story?
People always ask me what's the most traumatic thing I've seen, and I really hate it when people ask me that question because, like, the very PG version of this is, as a team we've dealt with, children that have passed away, babies that have passed away, and I don't want to relive that. I don't want to go back into that memory and explore that because it's the worst. It's the single worst thing that could happen to a family unit. But, again, we're talking about the highs and lows of a very difficult and demanding job. So that's where that camaraderie in ED is so important because we're all in that together. We're basically at each other's shoulder, basically being like, I've got you. We will get through this as a team. I'm very privileged to have very supportive senior staff, very supportive management, very supportive medical teams and the head of department who are proactive in making sure that our well-being is as good as it can be. I've mentioned before that we are not allowed to have the boys work together in the department. However, we want to go go-karting. We're going to all take a day. We're all planning to have a mutual day off. We're thinking it's going to be International Women's Day. And they can have a lovely pink shift with no boys while we go do stupid stuff.
Good. Boys being boys.
Boys being boys. Go-karts, beers, and absolute nonsense bragging. Perfect day out.
And that's part of your debriefing, isn't it?
Correct.
It's that whole, this guy gets me. He knows where I'm coming from. He knows what I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
They understand me. It's a whole class of their own, aren't they?
100%. So even there's a lot of the girls at work I'm quite close with and, it's all of that shared experience where I'll have some of my friends come to me and say, okay, I need to talk about this. And then we'll talk about it because sometimes for all of my girlfriends at work who have partners who aren't nurses, they can sympathise, but they can't truly empathise with what we go through in a day.
Exactly.
Yes, ED, we deal with a lot, but so do my colleagues on the wards. So do my colleagues in outpatients, theatres. Like, the experience of nursing is not unique to just emergency. I've been